In the stillness of divine presence, the voice of Archangel Michael emerges as a radiant current of light and authority, carrying a message of protection, revelation, and transition for all who are ready to hear. This message is not bound by time, religion, or chance. It is a sacred call for awakening and remembrance. Archangel Michael stands as a guardian of truth, wielding the sword of divine clarity that cuts through illusion, fear, and confusion. His presence announces that heaven's attention is upon the earth and upon the souls who have endured long seasons of trial and endurance. God's presence surrounds those reading or hearing these words, assuring them that this message is not coincidence or imagination but a divine appointment meant to strengthen faith and prepare the heart for transformation. The heavens open to reveal that every tear, every prayer, and every act of kindness has been seen, recorded, and treasured. The time has come for revelation and exposure, for that which was hidden to come into light, and for those who have carried silent burdens to be vindicated. The divine message begins with a call to immediate attention, a sense of urgency that compels the soul to pause and receive. Heaven whispers that delay can no longer hold dominion. What is unfolding is not ordinary but a supernatural intervention aligned with divine timing. You are urged to open your heart now, not later, for the season of delay is ending, and a new era of beginning is dawning. Archangel Michael speaks of spiritual battles fought in unseen realms. Many have endured storms and trials that were not only physical or emotional but deeply spiritual in nature. These battles were not signs of abandonment but evidence of divine trust. For those chosen to carry light often face the fiercest resistance. Heaven's record shows prayers whispered in midnight hours, tears that fell unseen, and faith that refused to die. Every moment of endurance has become a seed sown into eternity, now ripening into divine reward and revelation. The celestial realm declares that hidden truths and long-veiled matters will be brought into light. What was concealed for protection will now be unveiled for purpose. A woman bearing divine evidence and carrying the message of revelation is being sent forth as a sign of God's orchestration. Her arrival is not random but prophetic, symbolizing the manifestation of heavenly timing and justice. She bears both the proof of what was and the promise of what will be. She stands as a vessel of transition. Her movement across thresholds signifies the movement of destiny itself. The symbol of packing your bags is both literal and spiritual. It represents the command to prepare for movement, to release the environments, attachments, and burdens that have completed their purpose. To pack one's bags under heaven's instruction means to align with divine relocation, not merely in place but in purpose, mindset, and spiritual vibration. New doors are opening, and old structures are being dissolved. What was once a place of comfort may now become a signpost of completion, urging you to move forward without fear. Divine timing is converging with spiritual awakening, and heaven's alignment is unfolding with perfection. The surrounding atmosphere, once heavy with uncertainty, now hums with anticipation of breakthrough. Every delay you have endured was not denial but divine orchestration. The end of the old season comes not with loss but with the redirection of blessings. Rejection, once a wound, now reveals itself as protection. Doors that closed were not denials but reroutes to greater assignments ordained before time. Archangel Michael's role as a warrior and guide intensifies in this hour. He is seen wielding his sword, not as a symbol of destruction but of truth cutting through deception and illusion. He fights on behalf of those too weary to fight for themselves, pushing back unseen forces, clearing obstacles, and preparing the path for divine justice. His presence in dreams, visions, and sudden moments of clarity is a reminder that heaven's army is actively engaged in your defense. Alongside this comes the divine invitation to obedience and faith. Obedience unlocks protection. Hesitation invites confusion. Heaven calls you to anchor yourself in prayer, in faith, and in peace. The instruction is not burdensome but freeing, for obedience aligns the soul with heaven's flow, and faith anchors the heart in divine assurance. As you release resistance, the energy of fear loses its grip, replaced by the quiet power of trust. The spiritual significance of packing bags continues with deeper meaning, leaving behind not only physical attachments but emotional and spiritual baggage that hinders movement. You are being invited into a wide space of provision, freedom, and renewal. Stepping forward in faith is not abandonment of what was but acceptance of what is divinely next. The woman's arrival, prophesied and prepared, marks a turning point for many. She brings revelation that aligns your path with truth. The message is clear: listen and be ready to receive. What was once distorted will now be clarified, and what was stolen or twisted will be restored. God's promise of vindication and restoration stands firm. Names once maligned will be rewritten, and reputations shadowed by injustice will shine again. Heaven's handwriting is upon your story, inscribing redemption over every wrong and rewriting endings with grace. Archangel Michael further encourages the soul to stand firm and trust without wavering. He speaks of courage born from divine presence, reminding that faith unshaken by circumstance is like a tree planted by living waters. Fear, anxiety, and confusion may attempt to rise, but they are illusions compared to the eternal stability of God's word and promise. The command is simple yet powerful: stand firm, trust deeply, and let divine order unfold. Behind the visible world, heavenly orchestration is at work. Angels move silently, redirecting outcomes, dissolving traps, and converting opposition into opportunity. Plans once hidden are now being unveiled, revealing that even in waiting, divine purpose was advancing. This is a moment to whisper prayers of surrender and release. Heaven hears even the faintest sigh of trust. Speak your desires before God with faith and confidence, for every word born in truth is carried into the divine realm. Surrender is not defeat but the highest form of spiritual strength. It is the yielding of one's own plan to the perfection of divine will. Assurance follows surrender, and with it comes the victory of divine presence. The old season, marked by struggle and uncertainty, is closing. A new season of revelation, crowning, and purpose begins. Heaven's voice proclaims that the cycle of endings was necessary for renewal. What once seemed like loss was the pruning of destiny. The light of divine victory now rests upon those who endured, and Archangel Michael stands as witness that every battle has meaning and every tear holds power. This message concludes with an early assurance that you are not forgotten, not forsaken, and not fighting alone. Divine protection surrounds you, revelation approaches you, and transition invites you into a higher plane of divine purpose and peace. Archangel Michael's voice continues to flow like a river of light, steady and unwavering, drawing the listener deeper into the understanding of divine transition. He speaks of a sacred alignment now unfolding across heaven and earth, a time when truth shall no longer be suppressed and when every hidden motive, deed, and intention shall stand exposed under divine illumination. The revelation coming is not to destroy but to heal, not to condemn but to correct, bringing closure to cycles of confusion and opening the way for restoration. For too long, many have carried questions without answers and burdens without relief, yet heaven now declares that what was once veiled shall be revealed. The divine plan, once obscured by trial and delay, begins to take shape with clarity and purpose. Each event, each disappointment, and each unanswered prayer now weaves into the greater design of redemption. This is the unfolding of divine orchestration, the unseen hand arranging outcomes with perfect precision so that the faithful may enter a season of fulfillment. Michael's message emphasizes that obedience remains the key that opens heaven's door. Obedience is not mere submission but a declaration of trust in divine wisdom. When the soul obeys even without full understanding, it proves faith in the unseen and invites heaven's favor to intervene. He reminds the listener that every act of faith, no matter how small, becomes a seed of transformation. When you whisper prayers instead of complaints, when you choose peace over reaction, when you trust the process rather than resist it, you become a vessel of divine manifestation. The angels surrounding Archangel Michael stand ready to assist those who align their hearts with divine will. Their mission is not only to protect but to guide, directing steps, softening hearts, and ensuring that destiny unfolds in divine order. Yet, Michael warns that resistance to divine prompting delays breakthrough. Those who cling to the past, to fear, or to the comfort of old ways will find themselves weighed down, unable to ascend into the new dimension of purpose. The call is clear: release what no longer serves, forgive what has wounded, and embrace the unknown with courage. Heaven assures that no obedience goes unnoticed, and no sacrifice made in love returns void. As divine revelation increases, a separation begins between illusion and truth. This is not punishment but purification, ensuring that only what is rooted in love and authenticity survives. Archangel Michael explains that many are being repositioned, spiritually, emotionally, and even physically. The act of packing one's bags becomes symbolic of divine movement. The faithful are being lifted from places of stagnation and placed into fields of divine opportunity. Some will see literal changes in environment, others will experience internal relocation, shifting beliefs, values, and perceptions to align with divine frequency. Heaven's timing is unfolding flawlessly. Those who once cried out in confusion over delay will soon understand that divine timing is never late but always perfect. Every waiting season was a preparation season. Every detour was an alternate route designed to protect you from unseen harm. Archangel Michael speaks of the woman bearing the message as a living symbol of heaven's unfolding mystery. Her role is not to glorify herself but to represent divine truth made manifest. She embodies revelation and transition, carrying within her the evidence of both human endurance and heavenly appointment. Her arrival in your path, whether literal or symbolic, signals that it is time to listen, to discern, and to receive the truth that aligns your journey with destiny. Through her, heaven declares that vindication and restoration are no longer distant promises but imminent realities. The scales of justice, once tipped by falsehood or manipulation, are now being balanced by divine decree. What was stolen, whether peace, reputation, opportunity, or time, shall be restored in multiplied measure. Every injustice endured will become a platform for divine testimony. Your name, once misunderstood or maligned, shall be rewritten with honor and light. Michael assures that this restoration is not merely external. It is a spiritual renewal that redefines identity. The faithful are being reminded of who they truly are, beings of light, created in divine image, endowed with purpose and authority. You are not defined by past wounds but refined through them. Every moment of endurance has sculpted inner strength. Every closed door was heaven's way of directing your energy toward greater callings. Therefore, the instruction remains: stand firm. Let faith be your foundation and truth your fortress. When fear whispers, silence it with remembrance of divine promise. When confusion rises, call upon divine peace to still the storm. Michael declares that the power to overcome lies not in striving but in surrender. Those who release control into divine hands find themselves upheld by unseen strength. Fear cannot dwell where faith abides, and anxiety cannot survive where trust reigns. Heaven's orchestration continues behind the scenes, even in silence. The angels assigned to your life work tirelessly, dismantling traps, reversing wrongs, and transforming obstacles into stepping stones. What appears as delay in the visible realm is often acceleration in the spiritual realm. Trust that heaven is working even when you cannot perceive it. Every prayer, every act of faith, sends ripples through unseen dimensions, shifting outcomes in your favor. Archangel Michael's message grows in intensity as he calls souls into deeper communion with heaven. Whisper prayers of surrender, not in desperation but in confidence. Speak words of gratitude, for gratitude is the highest form of faith. Declare your trust aloud, for the spoken word carries creative power, shaping reality according to divine intention. When you pray, do not merely ask, align. When you surrender, do not resign. Empower your spirit through acceptance of divine flow. Assurance of divine presence and victory concludes this portion of the message. The season of endings has passed, and now begins the era of crowning. Heaven celebrates those who endured faithfully, those who continued to love in the midst of pain and to believe amidst silence. The reward is near, not in material form alone but in spiritual elevation. You are rising into a new level of awareness where divine presence becomes tangible, where fear loses its influence, and where peace becomes your permanent dwelling. Archangel Michael's sword, radiant and sharp, symbolizes the cutting away of every chain that once bound your spirit. Freedom is not a promise. It is the current reality being unveiled before your eyes. The light of revelation now fills the spaces once occupied by doubt. You are chosen not merely to survive but to lead others into faith, courage, and truth. As this segment of the message closes, the Archangel declares that your life is being rewritten by divine authorship. The ending you feared shall become the beginning you hoped for, and every shadow shall bow before the rising light of your destined victory. As the light of Archangel Michael's message deepens, the voice of divine truth continues to flow with even greater clarity and purpose. The heavens declare that the period of obscurity has passed, and a new phase of enlightenment begins for all who open their hearts to receive. The divine transition now underway is not simply about external change, but an inner awakening, a lifting of the veil that has long obscured divine perception. Michael speaks with authority, reminding humanity that heaven's plans are always perfect, though rarely understood in the moment. What seemed to be setbacks were in truth stepping stones toward fulfillment. What felt like endings were divine beginnings disguised in the language of loss. The celestial realm moves with precision, turning sorrow into strength, confusion into revelation, and darkness into the womb of divine birth. This is the season when those who trusted through storms shall see why the winds were necessary, for without the storm, there could be no new shore reached, and without the breaking, there could be no building anew. The Archangel turns his focus once again to faith and obedience, explaining that faith is not an abstract belief but an active partnership with heaven. To have faith is to act in alignment with divine instruction even before the outcome is visible. Many have prayed for change, yet heaven answers by commanding movement, by saying, "Pack your bags, step forward, leave behind what is no longer ordained." Those who hesitate miss the flow of divine timing, for heaven's rhythm moves like a river, always advancing, never stagnant. When God instructs, obedience must be immediate, for delay invites confusion. The faithful are urged to trust even when the path seems unclear, for every act of obedience plants a seed of divine manifestation. Archangel Michael teaches that trust is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. To trust God is to declare, "I may not know the how, but I know the who," and to rest in the assurance that heaven's wisdom surpasses human understanding. In this divine orchestration, the symbolism of the woman bearing the message grows even more profound. She is not merely a person but a sign, a prophetic representation of divine revelation entering human experience. She carries both evidence and instruction, signifying that heaven is now revealing truths that will realign destinies. Her presence calls for discernment, humility, and readiness to receive. The message she bears will require courage to accept and wisdom to act upon, for it will expose falsehoods and affirm truths long buried. Michael reveals that this is part of heaven's justice, for God does not forget the cries of the righteous nor overlook the hidden labors of those who served faithfully in silence. Vindication is not vengeance. It is divine balance being restored. Every false word spoken in darkness shall be corrected by truth in light. Every loss endured for righteousness' sake shall return multiplied in blessing. Heaven's law ensures that nothing offered in love or endured in faith is ever wasted. Archangel Michael then reminds that as revelation increases, resistance may also arise. Darkness always trembles before light, and the forces that once thrived in shadow will attempt to distract, confuse, or dishearten the faithful. Yet there is no need for fear, for heaven's armies surround the chosen. Michael himself leads legions of angels armed with truth and power, driving back confusion and establishing divine order. The sword he wields is symbolic of discernment, cutting through lies, illusions, and self-deception. The faithful are instructed to stand firm, to remain unshaken by chaos, and to fix their gaze on divine truth. Strength in this season comes not from striving but from stillness, knowing that the Lord fights for you while you remain steadfast in peace. Do not let fear distort perception or impatience drive premature action. The heavens are moving with perfect orchestration. Every delay hides divine preparation, and every silence conceals heavenly construction. Michael's message turns to the theme of surrender, explaining that surrender is the highest form of worship because it acknowledges divine sovereignty. To surrender is to say, "Not my will, but divine will be done," and in that release, the soul finds freedom. Many have wrestled with unanswered questions, yet heaven whispers that understanding is not always required, trust is. Those who insist on controlling outcomes miss the beauty of divine timing, while those who yield discover miracles unfolding effortlessly. The act of surrender transforms waiting into worship and pain into purpose. Heaven's power flows most freely through surrendered vessels, for they carry no resistance, only willingness. Prayer, therefore, is not a demand but a dialogue, a moment of divine alignment where human will bows before eternal wisdom. Speak your prayers with expectation, but release the results to God, for heaven's answers are often far greater than human requests. The Archangel assures that divine presence never departs from the faithful. Even in moments of silence or isolation, heaven watches attentively. The unseen realm is alive with activity, angels moving, doors opening, and barriers dissolving at the precise moment appointed. The faithful must learn to interpret stillness not as absence, but as the calm before revelation. Every prayer uttered in sincerity becomes a command in the spiritual dimension, and every tear shed in faith becomes a key unlocking hidden blessings. Michael calls the faithful to live not by sight but by spiritual awareness, for what is unseen is eternal and more real than the visible world. Those who train their eyes on the divine rather than the circumstance will walk in peace even amidst chaos. The Archangel's message then returns to the theme of divine assurance and victory. Heaven announces that the battles fought in secrecy have not gone unnoticed. Every spiritual struggle, every sleepless night, every hidden act of forgiveness and endurance has reached heaven's record. Now the season of crowning approaches. The faithful will receive recognition not from man but from God. The trials of the past have purified motives, refined faith, and prepared hearts for divine elevation. The new season begins with revelation. Clarity replaces confusion, peace replaces fear, and purpose replaces uncertainty. Those who endured faithfully will find themselves positioned in places of influence and spiritual authority. The grace that carried them through storms will now establish them upon solid foundations. Heaven proclaims that no weapon formed against them shall prosper, for divine favor surrounds them like a shield. Michael concludes this segment by reminding all that divine transition requires courage. The old must be released completely for the new to emerge fully. Those who try to cling to both worlds, the past and the future, will find themselves torn between them. Step forward in faith, leaving behind old pain, old identity, and old cycles. The new path will demand greater responsibility but will also bring greater reward. Heaven's light now shines on those chosen for this transition, declaring them not merely survivors but ambassadors of divine truth. As the message of Archangel Michael reaches its divine culmination, the heavens grow still, and an atmosphere of reverence fills the spiritual realm, as though creation itself pauses to receive the final seal of divine assurance. The Archangel stands radiant in light, his countenance filled with both gentleness and power, embodying the justice, mercy, and truth of the Eternal One. His voice flows now not as a command, but as a blessing, the final benediction of heaven's message to those who have endured faithfully. Beloved souls, he begins, You have walked through the valley of uncertainty and crossed the wilderness of endurance. You have faced storms that tested your foundation and nights that seemed endless. Yet behold, you have not fallen but have been refined. Every struggle, every silence, every unanswered question was part of a divine process shaping you for a greater purpose. The fire that once seemed to consume you has, in truth, purified your essence, leaving only gold fit for divine use. You stand now not as the same being who began this journey, but as one transformed, strengthened, and illuminated by the touch of divine grace. Archangel Michael raises his hand, and a wave of celestial peace extends across realms unseen, touching every heart open to receive. Heaven's decree, he continues, is that the old burdens shall not cross into the new season. The weariness you once carried shall fall away like dust from ancient roads, for the path ahead requires lightness of spirit and clarity of mind. Release all that has ended, for what is complete must return to the source, and what is divine will endure eternally. In this new dawn, do not look backward, for the horizon before you gleams with promise and revelation. Walk with courage, not as one uncertain, but as one chosen to carry light into darkened places. For you are the living testimony of divine faithfulness, the evidence that heaven's word never returns void. Heaven's sound expands into harmony, and Michael's words resonate through it. Let this be the seal upon your heart, that divine love neither departs nor diminishes. When the world shifts and voices change, when shadows attempt to return, remember that heaven's presence is constant. You are guarded, guided, and grounded by divine authority. Every step you take in alignment with faith will summon angels to your side, for the army of light does not rest while the faithful walk their path. When fear whispers, speak truth. When doubt arises, recall the victories already written in your story. The same power that parted seas and silenced storms resides within your spirit. The divine does not dwell in distant places, but within the breath, the heart, and the will of all who choose light. Michael's gaze turns tender as he speaks of unity and restoration. Do not walk alone, for love was never meant to isolate but to unite. Seek peace with one another, and when possible, extend grace as freely as it has been extended to you. The world is weary, and you are the light it seeks. Speak truth not with judgment but with compassion, for divine truth restores rather than condemns. As you serve others, heaven will serve you. As you lift another, so shall you be lifted. Let your words be instruments of healing and your actions the proof of faith. The time for division has ended. Now begins the era of divine unity, one where hearts tuned to truth will rise above fear and lead others towards spiritual awakening. He then extends his sword of light, placing it symbolically upon the hearts of all listening. With this blessing, he proclaims, receive divine courage. Let no obstacle deter you, no darkness dissuade you, and no past pain define you. The sword that I carry is not one of destruction, but of truth, and it now rests within your spirit. Speak with clarity, act with righteousness, and live with devotion. You are entrusted with divine assignment. Heaven's seal of authority rests upon your journey. The path may still challenge you, but know that every challenge will reveal greater strength within you. Remember always, victory is not only promised, it is already written. The heavens stir as light begins to expand outward, and Michael's voice softens into the rhythm of divine peace. The Eternal One, whose wisdom surpasses understanding, now blesses you with the serenity of alignment. May your mind remain clear, your heart remain open, and your faith remain unshaken. May your household know the protection of divine guardianship, and your spirit never forget the song of heaven that calls it home. Walk forward clothed in light. Walk forward carrying truth. Walk forward knowing that no force can oppose what God has ordained. This is not an ending, but a sacred continuation, the beginning of purpose fulfilled. As his final words echo through the heavens, the energy of peace settles like dawn upon a quiet ocean. The air is filled with divine stillness, the kind that follows revelation and precedes manifestation. Michael's radiance fades gently, leaving behind a lingering warmth, the assurance that heaven remains near. And from the silence comes the eternal promise whispered softly to every soul. You are loved beyond measure, protected beyond fear, and destined beyond imagination. Carry this truth wherever you go, and let it shape every word, thought, and deed. For you are not merely a receiver of this message, you are now a bearer of it. Thus the message concludes, sealed by divine authority and sustained by eternal love. The listener is left not with finality but with awakening, the realization that heaven's guidance continues in every heartbeat and every moment of surrender. This benediction of Archangel Michael is not a farewell but an invocation, a calling forth of strength, wisdom, and unshakable peace for all time. May every soul who hears or reads these words find courage in darkness, clarity in confusion, and purpose in every unfolding day. And as you carry this light into the world, remember that divine guidance is ever present. Heaven's voice still speaks to those who listen with their hearts, and the archangels walk beside those who act with faith, humility, and love.